favorite Halloween candy. Of course, it ties into being Halloween and our trunk or treat today. My wife talked about it, how we direct our kids to the Kit Kats. I am also a big Kit Kat, but I'm a purist, like original Kit Kat. And as I was looking this up this year for new candies or different ones, Kit Kat's made other flavors, and they came out with this one. As far as I know, this is the first year. Maybe it's not. This is the Ghost Toast Kit Kat. So, no, it's okay. This is a Cinnamon Toast Crunch flavored Kit Kat. So I got it, and my son also loves Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So I was like, all right, dude, we can try it. And we did, and it's not bad, but I'm just an original. Like, I don't love the whole new thing. He liked it. You know, anybody like Cinnamon Toast Crunch fans in here? Big time? Sam, yeah. It was all right. It was fine. Like, again, I'm kind of a purist and original. Sam, here you go. Sam can choose to share or not share. I haven't seen Sam in a while, so I gave Sam a candy bar. So, you drop your phone to catch the kick. Respect, dude. Attaboy. All right, so I was a little put off by this whole new flavored of Kit Kat. I'm an original, tried and true. Give me my normal Kit Kat. And it's kind of this idea of new and old and how they don't always go together. That's kind of the tension we're going to look at a little bit today. We're going to look at it from, obviously, the Jesus perspective of how Jesus brings in something new. So today it's going to be the fact that Jesus came, he ushered in something new, and things will never really be the same. So in our series, we are in our series today on the life and ministry of Jesus. But before we dive in, I want you to think about this really quick, that we want Jesus' new thing to be your new thing. Regardless of how you feel about new things or old things, whether you like them or not, let Jesus' new thing be your new thing. And we're continuing on through Mark's gospel. We're taking a nice slow walk through this book to learn about the life and ministry of Jesus so that we can learn to live like him. Now, before we jump into today's passage, what we're going to do is recap last week really quickly. So we talked about last week how Jesus sees us. Jesus saw and called Levi the tax collector, making him, he was an unlikely choice, a Jewish tax collector. But then Jesus also went and he hung out with more tax collectors and a bunch of sinners. He saw them and he called some of them. Jesus sees us and calls us, even if we're unlikely, even if nobody else sees us, Jesus does. And then we need to see others how Jesus sees them. That was one of the big pieces. See other people how Jesus does. But then Jesus doesn't just see, Jesus embraces them. He goes to them, he hangs out, and Jesus embraces us, our whole mess. And we don't have to fix anything before we come to Jesus. So we also should embrace others. It might be uncomfortable to embrace others, but it's what Jesus did. We also need Jesus. We have this need for Jesus, and we need to need him. When things are great and we're doing awesome, we need Jesus. When things are rough and terrible, we need Jesus, and everywhere in between. So never forget our daily and continual need for Jesus. So we're going to pick it up right in Mark where we left off. We're going to be in Mark 2. We're going to start in verse 18. It'll be up here behind me. Kyle's got it there all ready for you. It's bookmarked in the Bibles on your tables. You want to follow along there. Phone, tablet, computer, all great. I will be in the NIV translation. We're going to start with verses 18 to 20. So here's Mark 2, 18 to 20. Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, how is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not? Jesus answered, how can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he's with them? They cannot, so long as they have him with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. So Jesus' question about fasting, what's going on is we have John the Baptist's old disciples, and the Pharisees are all fasting. Really devout Jews at this time were fasting, usually Monday and Thursday, is a religious thing. A lot of times somber or acts of mourning, or just trying to show how great they were with God. Very much an act of devotion with God, calling out to God to bring his kingdom to fulfillment. So that's all well and good. But Jesus' disciples weren't doing this. What's going on? Like, don't they care about this? Don't they observe these customs? Don't they need to be more devoted to God? So Jesus' question on this, because leaders and teachers were responsible for their disciples. So they come at this. But this is a new way of doing things. That's what Jesus says. New way of doing things right now, not fasting is scheduled. And Jesus' response, he gives this wedding illustration. He starts with this wedding. He's like, how can the guests of a wedding fast when the bridegroom is there? It would be really inappropriate. Weddings were joyous. They were celebratory, right? Some rabbis even taught that weddings could take precedent over religious obligations like fasting because weddings were so important and they were joyous. They're this beautiful coming together in love and commitment that should be celebrated and rejoiced over. Jesus is saying that's what's right now. It is time for that to be joyful. It's a new time. Jesus brought the kingdom of God near, so now is not the time to fast. He says there will be a time when he is gone that fasting is appropriate again. Now, he's alluding to his death and when they anticipate his return. But he's like, that's not now. They need to rejoice. So there's two things I want us to take from this little wedding illustration first. And that we rejoice when Jesus is with us, and we stay devoted to Jesus even in his absence. Now, these may be kind of new things for you, or maybe something to look at in a new way, both staying devoted to Jesus and rejoicing with Jesus. But I want to look at this too. As Christians, we kind of live in both of these realities. See, Jesus is coming, we have the Holy Spirit, so we always have his presence. But yet, we're also awaiting his return. So we're anticipating that as well. So we're going to rejoice, and we're going to stay devoted. So the first one is to rejoice. Earlier this week, you know, I'm a big sports fan. The NBA season kicked off. And on Tuesday night, the NBA actually made history when there was the first ever father-son duo to play in an NBA game together. So LeBron James and his son, Bronny James, played together. And LeBron has said in the past that he really wanted to play with his son. So in the second quarter on Tuesday, they go to the scorer's table together. They're there's pictures of that, and they check in. It's a big deal. They just played a couple minutes together. His son, not really NBA ready yet. But after the game, LeBron talks about what this moment meant. And this guy has championships and accolades and gold medals, but he's always going to cherish the moment with his son. He'll look back years from now and delight and remember and have joy in that moment. So we want to rejoice in Jesus. Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Part of the definition of rejoice is to show joy or delight. So delight in Jesus. We always have the presence of Jesus in our lives, and that's something we can take delight in and rejoice in. And rejoicing is an action. It's something we choose to do. It's not a feeling that just happens. It's not something we can manufacture. It's something we choose to do. Think about being at a wedding or going to a wedding, to stay in Jesus' illustration. Your circumstances might not be great. You're having a rough time. You're down. But you go to the wedding. There's your action. You go. You're there to celebrate, to support, to be there and recognize that couple. It's bigger than what's going on because of what it means for them. So we rejoice when things are hard. We choose to celebrate Jesus even when things are hard, that he came and we still have his presence right now. And that doesn't change even when everything else around us does. He is a stability and a constant that we desperately need. It's a commitment from Jesus to you that he won't leave you, that he won't abandon you, and maybe everybody else would or everybody else has. It's a relationship that Jesus wants with you. He wants to be with you, to have coffee with you, to watch the game with you, to hang out, to guide you, to help you. There are times in life when it feels like the world won't stop hitting you, but we can also be constantly hit with the presence of Jesus because he's there in the midst of it all. That phrase, in the midst of it all, has been probably my favorite phrase to use over the last several years because wow, Jesus is just there. No matter what's going on, he is there with me and with you in it. So we rejoice when things are hard. We also rejoice when things are really good. Jesus is part of the good. Go back to the wedding again. Right? If you've ever stood up in a wedding, you've been in the bridal party, right? You're up front. It's an honor to be part of that. You're up front. You're seen. That's a big deal. But the focus is still on the couple getting married. So things can be good for you. You can be seen, be important, be successful. But rejoicing in Jesus is choosing to give him praise, give him the credit for the good in your life. You still matter, but the focus is on Jesus. It always points to him. So we rejoice in Jesus no matter the circumstances. We also stay devoted to Jesus. Jesus says there will be a time when his disciples will fast again. Time for that level of devotion again. Let's do a food analogy with this one, right? I love to make creme brulee. Love to eat creme brulee. Right, we got creme brulee fans? Yeah, a few. Okay, right? It's that nice, smooth, creamy custardy, and you crack into it with that crusty sugar on the top, right? I wouldn't say it's overly complicated to make, but once you start, you have to actually stay very devoted and focused to make it. Because what you're doing at one point is you're heating cream and you got to mix it with some egg yolks. If you've ever done this, what can happen is if the egg yolks get too hot, they scramble. And then we get scrambled egg creme brulee, and that's disgusting. We don't want that. So once you start adding in the cream to the eggs, you got to whisk, and you got to keep it going, right? This is the reason Geoff does bicep curls, so we can whisk, and we whisk, and we whisk, right? We don't want the gross creme brulee. You keep it going until it's mixed properly. You stay devoted to the process of making that. We need to stay devoted to Jesus just like that. We keep going with him and we stay with him. And we can do this through a variety of spiritual practices or spiritual disciplines. In the last several weeks, we've talked many times about prayer and Bible reading. Please keep doing those. If you haven't, I would encourage you to start. We're going to look at two other ones today. First one is fasting, and maybe these are new. Fasting. This was the issue brought to Jesus' attention, so let's address that one. Now, in the Old Testament, fasting done a variety of reasons. A big one was the Day of Atonement, when they would fast as part of being atoned for their sins. It was a requirement under the old law. That's not today. Right? Fasting for today isn't a requirement, but I think it's actually still a really good practice to give a shot to. It's about a dedication or devotion or sacrifice to God, and it involves abstaining from something that you will notice so that you then focus on God. Usually some type of food or drink, but really you can fast from anything. Social media is usually one I do. Could be phones, games, whatever. But it's abstain from something you will feel and notice. And then when you do, you put your focus and attention on God. You're sacrificing something to spend time with him. It's devotion to him. I actually take the social media apps off my phone because my default is to go to them. So when I do and they're not there, that's my reminder, hey, go pray. Something like that. If you do it for food, when you feel that hunger pain, go spend time with God. And you can fast over something specific, right? In the Bible, a lot of times they were mourning, so they would fast. Decisions in your life, fast over those. Spend time with God about that decision while you're abstaining. Our leadership team here fasts and prays the first Wednesday of every month for this church, for you, for the ministry, for what we do, because it's important. So give fasting a try if you haven't, as an act of sacrifice and devotion to God. And the second one's solitude. I encourage us to think about solitude. Now, understand that solitude is not escaping from the reality around you and avoiding what's happening. That would be more like isolation. But solitude is withdrawing from the distractions to hear from God and be with him without interruption. In the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, author John Mark Comer says, solitude is engagement, isolation is escape. Solitude is safety, isolation is danger. Solitude is how you open yourself up to God. Isolation is painting a target on your back for the tempter. Solitude is when you set aside time to feed and water and nourish your soul to let it grow into health and maturity. Isolation is what you crave when you neglect the former. So think about the intentionality behind solitude. And I get the difficulty. We're all really busy. We have a lot going on. There's life, there's kids, there's family, there's work, there's the gym, your kitchen, your phone, your pumpkin spice lattes. You're going to go pick your pumpkins, all of it. I get it. But when we take the time for solitude to just hear from God, when it's just you and God and it's quiet, you can get clarity, a clear sense of direction that might be impossible to hear with all the noise of life, even the good noise. You can get rest and refreshment. Think about real rest. Just a chance to breathe, to take in a breath. Breathe in the presence of Jesus and breathe out the craziness of life. Do that this week intentionally. I don't even care if it sounds weird. Take a slow, deep breath and breathe in Jesus and sit there and hold that with him. And then breathe out the stress or the craziness and see what it does. Feel if you're refreshed, right? Refreshment comes actually feeling fresh, ready to go, a new energy, a new motivation, and it comes from solitude. So go to solitude willingly, not as an escape, but an intentional withdrawal to be quiet and just be with God. So stay devoted to God. All right, Jesus continues on here with his little explanation to the Pharisees. We're going to read Mark 2:21 and 22. All right, it says, "No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. Otherwise, the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. No one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour the new wine into the new wineskin." So Jesus kind of gets at how new and old don't totally mix, and he's illustrating his point a little more. And he gives too many examples, or even many parables. He starts with this garment. And he says, imagine an old garment with a hole. And he says, if you put new cloth over it, that new cloth eventually it's going to shrink. All right, it's going to pull and eventually just pull away, and the hole becomes bigger and worse. And they also won't match up. It won't be the same. Then he talks about wineskins. In this day, goat skins were used to hold wine. What you do is you put the wine in the wineskin, and it would ferment as it's there. Now, new skins were soft. They were pliable. So as the wine would expand during the fermentation process, they would all the wineskin was great. But the old wineskins had become brittle. So as the new wine in it, as it ferments, they would burst. Now you've lost an old wineskin, and you've lost perfectly good new wine. Nobody wants that. You've destroyed both. It's the worst of both worlds. So what it boils down to is this. Excuse me. Jesus is here, and nothing is the same as it was. He's going to die, he will rise, he'll ascend, and eventually come back, but things don't go back to how they were. The new reality of the kingdom of God doesn't fit with the old reality. The new way of life in Jesus doesn't fit with our old way of life. In this scenario, the old and the new don't really mix. Right? That old garment, not covered with new cloth. New wine doesn't go in the old wineskin. The newness of God. Let's talk about the newness. Every year, it feels like there's new slang or new phrases that get used, especially my high school teachers or some younger than me would understand this. I had to look some up. I don't know if these are all new this year or what, but this is all according to the internet. So here we go. I'm going to give you a few. There's one that says, ate and left no crumbs. Means you did something really well or an outfit looked really good. I never seem to be able to use that one right. Stacey and I try at home, and we can't. There's a cap and no cap, which is lie or no lie. No cap meaning that's totally true. Let them cook, how somebody's results will be really impressive. These are one in sports, so you got to let that guy cook. You got to let him do his thing. And then vibe check. I like this one. How's somebody doing? So instead, if I walk in this morning, instead of saying, hey, Mark, how are you? I say, yo, Mark, vibe check. Now, I can, see, I did it with Mark because I can imagine the face he would give me if I did that with him. I will never do that, Mark, I promise. Maybe I'll text it to you sometime, but he does, yes. We may not need to embrace all the new slang. I don't think we need to, but we do need to embrace God's newness. God's newness. God's going to do new things, okay? God will call us and ask us to do new things, but here is the big key. God's newness. God will do it. God's newness is not always our newness, because we might really want to do something new. It's exciting, it's different, it's fun. We don't like what we're doing now. We want to go buck a trend. That's all fine. But don't cross the bridge to your something new and leave God behind at your something old. Okay? Our old thing might not be God's old thing. Maybe he's not done. Right? If we're tired of it or it's not working, we feel like it's run its course. Maybe it's not old for God yet. It's something we got to be careful of, because maybe God is going to do something new from within where you still are. Because we too easily, I think, think that God's new thing has to be this massive spectacle, right? A huge thing for my huge God. And that might be the case. God might do something new that is massive. But what about when his newness is small, right? When it's seemingly not a big thing. Does it mean it doesn't matter? That it's unimportant? Of course not. We all would agree there. So God might be doing a smaller new thing, and it might be just inside of you. He's showing you a new reliance on him that you haven't embraced before, that you haven't been willing to step in and give up control to him. That can be God's new thing. Or he's showing you how to choose joy that you've never had before. No matter what's happening, he's showing you the hope in him that you can take joy in. Or he's showing you a struggle you didn't know you had, so now you can address it and follow him more freely. He's tearing through the hardness of your heart so that you'll accept his grace, that even though you've messed up, he's still with you and giving you another chance. These might be new things that God is doing just inside of your heart, in your own life. And they're new because he's showing them to you in a new way or for the first time ever. So Jesus brought that reliance, that joy and grace, and maybe they need to come back to you as a new inside of you. There's also newness outside of us, right? Think about relationships and community, about others, how you approach people you already know. He's going to get you to look at them and see them in a new way, to talk to them in a new way, to share more than you have, make it a little bit different. Maybe he's leading you to deepen a certain relationship or repair a relationship, to own or address some struggles or the issues in a relationship. Maybe it's to forge a brand new one. People you come into contact with but you don't know well yet. These are all things that God might be doing as new outside of you. They won't be all of it for all of us. But he's doing something new just in your life right here. And even if these new things don't seem life-changing to you, they might start to change a life somewhere. Knowing Jesus, seeing Jesus, hearing about him is life-changing. So don't ever discount God leading you to showing him to someone in a new way. So we want to be open to the newness of God. And remember this too. God's newness does not mean a new God. God doesn't change even though he's doing something new. Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He'll never contradict who he's been. We might see him in a new way, in a new light, have a new experience, but he's always the same, even when he's having us do something new. And when he is doing something new, we also want to be careful to not contain him. Don't contain this great thing we have in Jesus. Later today, we're going to go out, and you get to eat some lunch that I got to put together. And it's barbecue pulled pork and shredded chicken, and I've had it in crock pots. If you know a crock pot, right, you put the lid on, it keeps the heat in there to cook it, right? But the best part is when you open it up and you get the smell. I'm going to tell you, the pulled pork smells really good. So I'm going to pull that lid, and I'm going to smell it, and it's just going to be like, oh, yeah, right there. I know small things get me through life, guys. It's that smell, that pulled pork when I open the crock pot. We open it up and let that smell out. We need to do that with Jesus. Don't keep Jesus in your crock pot. Let him come out. Containing Jesus is really what putting something new into something old does. It holds the new wine back, okay? It doesn't let the new fabric shine or stand on its own. And we may not realize it, but we can all contain Jesus sometimes. It happens when we accept him, but we don't allow him to change or transform us. Don't trap a relationship with Jesus inside you. Let it transform you inside and out. You should change. Listen, I don't like change. Okay, I like routine. I'm set in my ways. I eat almost the same thing for breakfast every day. I like things the same. But remember that Hebrews verse. Jesus stays the same. There's my constant. There's your constant. But I should change. And you should change with Jesus in your life. Through the convictions you have, that voice of God reminding you about the things you shouldn't do. The things that don't honor or please God. The sins in your life, we all have them. When we don't act on those convictions, when we keep behaving in the same old way, we're actually containing Jesus. That's putting the new wine of Jesus into the old wineskin that was our life. And how about our actions? James 2:14-17 says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such a faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead." Jesus in our lives should change the way we live and act. Jesus should naturally and willingly flow from us. Now, you're going to go help that person before helping yourself. You're going to go spend time with somebody when you have a lot on your plate. You're going to forgive that family member for whatever you're holding against them. You're going to give more generously and sacrificially, even though money or time is tight. Now, for some, these might be small changes. For some, they're massive, but they're important either way, because it's that new wine of Jesus needs to go into the new wineskin. Let that transformation and change happen. Even if it feels a little messed up, it might feel hard and weird at times. There's this old song by the band Sanctus Real called "Whatever You're Doing." Has a line that says, "Whatever you're doing inside of me, it feels like chaos, but somehow there's peace." It might seem chaotic, but find peace in the fact that it's Jesus transforming you into who he wants you to be. Who Jesus wants you to be is the best version of you when you live that out and embrace it honestly. It's the you that honors him and loves him and lives for him. So let that come out of you. Don't hold it in for yourself. Don't contain Jesus. Let him out and let others see Jesus in you. Rejoice in Jesus. We'll wrap up here. Remember to rejoice in Jesus no matter the circumstances. Take delight in having him in your life. And then stay devoted to him. Try fasting and spending time in solitude with him. See how it brings you closer to him. And be ready for Jesus' newness. Remember, it's God's new thing. But be ready to embrace whatever that new thing he's doing inside of you, outside of you, big, small. Be ready for it. And then don't contain Jesus. Let him come out of you. Let him transform you and change you. He is constant, but he changes us. So let whatever his new thing is, let it be your new thing. Let's pray. God, I thank you for today and for this passage and for the reminder we have of the newness you brought. God, the things never will be the same, never have to be. And God, that you're making us new, that you've made this world a new place for you. I pray that we would embrace that, and that we would be willing to see what you're doing inside of us and outside of us, and we would stay devoted to you, to hear from you about those new things, whether it's solitude or fasting or just more prayer and reading our Bibles, God, whatever it is, that we would stay devoted to you. And God, I pray that we would consciously rejoice in you. Make the action of taking delight in praising you, rejoicing in you when things are good and when things are rough. I pray that would be something you would put on all our hearts today as we head out for trunk or treat and for the rest of the week. we would just take joy in you and in what you're doing. So we thank you again for this morning, God, in your name.